Welcome, one and all, to the Success Curious podcast. It's your man, Andy, here. And honestly, sometimes I'm having a whole bunch of pinch me moments, if I'm being honest, gang. I know that I've been very, very lucky to have some of the most phenomenal guests ever on this little show of mine. And as we head towards 3 figures of episodes, the momentum's just getting better and better and better. Now, as you guys know, I'm a big sports freak. So to have one of the best wheelchair tennis players in the world join me, you can bet your ass I'm getting excited. Ruby Bishop is a British international wheelchair tennis player. She is currently ranked number 30 in the world. Has been as high as 29th when she was in the youth tennis setup. She got to number 3 in the entire world. Now, if you were to do a little bit of a Google and a little bit of a gander, you would see a whole bunch of stuff that she's achieved in tennis land. But the thing that she is perhaps just as, if not more proud of, is Ruby's Law. And it's in line with the Beyond the Barriers Act, which is an initiative that is aimed at driving the breaking down of concerns and prejudices, be they subconscious, unconscious, or conscious, around those with disabilities. She's done so much, and she's just made me feel really old by telling me that she's only 22. So it's really upset me a little bit. So I've just got to try and pick myself up. But the fact that I've got an international tennis player on my hands who's just been to Melbourne when I was in England, representing the Union Jack. Honestly, my job's really cool. Ruby Bishop, you absolute star. How the devil are you today?
I'm very good today. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I will need to go and question a couple of things in terms of how much I feel I've achieved versus how much I perhaps should have achieved now I've dug into you. But I'm absolutely super, super proud to have you on the show. Now, Ruby, how is the UK at the minute? How are you at the minute? Obviously, we're recording this sort of early March 2026. There's been a bit of drama kicking around in the world. How are you doing over there in the UK?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I think for me, same old here, training, competitions, not much changes. Just got back from Australia, like you said, so the heat difference is upsetting. I enjoyed the weather over there more than England. Left in snow, and I went over there at 45 degrees. So, yeah, that's upsetting. I'm missing that.
Man, look, I can't say that I'm not slightly disappointed that I'm not slightly disappointed to be back over here, if I'm being honest. But Rubes, I've been doing so much homework on you and really coming to sort of understand what you're about, who you are, how you're driven, and all that sort of stuff. You're just such an impressive character, man. You really, really are. And I can't wait to dig into success as it is in your world. But for those people that don't know who you are, Ruby Bishop, could you give us a bit of an idea, a bit of an elevator spiel as to who you are and what got you to this point in your trip?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, I play wheelchair tennis for Great Britain. I started when I was 14, so relatively late compared to a lot of other people. Um, and yeah, in my junior career, I had a very successful career, world number 3, GB number 1. And yeah, I'm currently now just trying to push to the top. I'm, like you said, 30 in the world with a career high of 29. So just trying to break into the top 15 for senior slams. But away from tennis, I didn't give myself this title, but I was told that I'm quite a disability advocate with all the campaign work that I do. And yeah, just trying to make a difference away from the tennis court. As obviously, you've probably researched my experience within education and sport other than tennis, what wasn't great. So yeah, that's what I try to do in my spare time, if you like.
Now, before I dig into that a little bit, why do you say that people gave you the title of disability advocate? Why do you say that people gave you that versus you sort of, owning that sort of moniker?
Yeah, I mean, I just never saw myself doing anything that, anyone else would do if they saw a problem that needed fixing. And yeah, I think now, like, I can see that why that kind of simulates to the same thing. But yeah, I was called it in an interview once, and I thought, oh, yeah, maybe I am. But I was never, I never set out to do that. I was just trying to raise awareness and kind of just like from my own experience, kind of change what was going on. And then yeah, I was just giving that name, and I thought, yeah, maybe I am doing that then.
No, look, man, and you know what? That's something that some of the most successful people in the world, they don't go out to gain the status that they end up getting. They
Yeah,
end up just getting given that status by by everyone that surrounds them, right? And it's really interesting that you say you didn't, it's not something that you originally thought. You just thought you were doing the right thing by those around you that that are going through similar or experiences along a theme, right?
yeah.
Which is fascinating. Now, um, I want to ask, and just for to put the whole picture together, why? What is the condition? What are the circumstances that have you being an international wheelchair tennis star, as opposed to a just a straight up bloody rock star tennis star, right? What's caused you to be there?
Yeah, so I was born with cerebral palsy, which is kind of like a neurological condition. It affects your balance, coordination, and movement. I have a right-sided hemiplegia, cerebral palsy, so it just mainly affects my right side, but it does come along with all its other great things that connect to it. So there's a lot going on, but yeah, I was born with the condition, so I've never known really anything different. I've always grown up going to the hospital, having splints or having operations from a young age. So it wasn't like an accident that some athletes or Paralympians have. I've always grown up with it. So in some ways, it's better to just grow up with a disability. In other ways, obviously, like you experience the barriers from a young age, so you don't know any different.
Have you ever had a time like so I've had a young lady by the name of Francesca Dean come on this show who I met through Javina McLean, and she calls herself a CP warrior, right? And
Yeah.
to this day, I'm quoting her in talks and books and all sorts of crap that I'm bloody penning stuff in, right? Because and I'll ask you for what your definition of a successful human is in a sec, but she just said, just turning up,
Yeah.
because doesn't matter how you feel, someone's going to want to see you, right? And it's just, she just blew me away, right? With yourself, because I obviously not, being a very much a novice in terms of that world. It feels like you might have different versions of CP, like no less significant one than the other,
Yeah.
but obviously taking you down very different tracks. What was it that when you said, the challenges that you faced when you were at school and trying to participate in PE and whatnot? What were those challenges? What, like, dig us, take us back to those, if you may.
Yeah, I think there was just so many. Obviously, PE for me was a main thing now. As I've left school, I reflect on, and I think that wasn't quite right. So I was never included in PE lessons. I was never invited to the sports awards, despite having played wheelchair tennis outside of school and wheelchair basketball too to a high level. Sports days, I was, given the day off, which at the time, I looked at as, oh, this is great. I can go do what I want. But actually, in reality, it was just them excluded me from the day because that was easier. And then, yeah, day to day when you're going to school as a wheelchair user or as a disabled person, you are going to face multiple different challenges, whether that's accessibility, where it's people. I found some people in high school, obviously, I don't know, it's kind of like a bit of an easy target to pick on someone that's got a disability. So I think, yeah, I experienced a little bit of that. Not loads. Some people had a lot worse than me, but I always found it very challenging when teachers would speak to you differently. Or, for example, there was a building that wasn't quite wheelchair accessible. And I thought to myself, okay, like how is a teacher going to handle this scenario as I'm a wheelchair user? The rest of the people aren't. And they just looked me up and down. and like carried on like their day like it was absolutely nothing and just left me outside this building that I couldn't get in. And that to this day probably is the most hurtful thing that happened for me, just because I felt if a teacher's going to do that, why is any student here going to think it's okay to treat somebody differently? So yeah, that to me wasn't great. But yeah, when it comes to the sport, it was mainly just not being included within PE lessons that I now reflect on thinking that's pretty bad.
That's absolutely mental, man. How old were you?
When I was at high school, it's like 14, 15. Like, I went to high school when I was 12, so yeah, until I
That's
was
ma
15, I left.
That is absolutely mental. Anyway, right, that just puts a bit of a background on who this individual is, team. But I want to start rocket blasting off towards success because she's got way more stuff around that to be having a yarn about, right? Now, Ruby, got to ask you the question I ask all my guests, right?
Yeah,
Now, success to me comes in a combination where success is also got elements like connection, influence, and happiness. And, all of these elements coexist with one another. No one can last without the other. Ruby Bishop, British international Paralympian tennis, bloody absolute whiz bang, or you name it, she is it. Ruby Bishop, what's your definition of a successful human?
I think, for me, it's not just about winning matches or medals. Obviously, I think for me, it's the way that you can overcome challenges, barriers, turning up every day, getting out of bed, trying to be a better version than yourself that you were yesterday. I think for me, if I look back on my life, I think for me, I'm not going to remember necessarily all the titles that I win, but I am going to remember the difference I've made for people. And I think, yeah, if you can be successful in that way, then that's great. And yeah, just trying to be better version of yourself and yeah, make a difference for others and keep creating opportunities. But if you go to the raw of that, it's turning up every day. It's getting out of bed when days are hard and just yeah, trying to push through and be a better version of yourself that you can.
I love because a lot of people, right, when it comes to a lot of these answers, a lot of people will talk about things like consistency and achieving goals and blah 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 blah. What I really like and what I really really resonate with when it comes to what you've said, this is probably one of my Achilles heels, if I'm honest. Probably why I resonate with it is the fact that um you focus a lot on the day-to-day incremental improvement, right?
Yeah,
You focus on just making sure that you just get, in some way, shape, or form, further forward than where you were the day before, right?
yeah,
And the simplicity of that is something that dopey individuals like me that think way too much, right? And thinking's bad for us, right? We just think, right, what if this, what if that? Well, it's all well and good. Like, what about if the next day it doesn't work out and blah, 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 and it just turns into an absolute bloody pain in the ass where you try and think too far ahead, you end up frying your brain, right? I love the simplicity of how you go about things, and it clearly works because you become one of the best bloody best in your craft in the entire world, right? So must be doing something right. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Now, Ruby, can I ask though, because as a tremendously successful athlete, right? Do you find that working with goals can be sometimes feel a little bit contradictory to the thing that does get you to where you want to be from a success point of view? Do you ever find yourself sometimes looking too far ahead, or because of the situation that you find yourself in, do you find that that sort of keeps you a little bit more centered, perhaps?
Yeah, I think for me, I like to think of like trust the process. The goals are there. You know, I want to win the medal. I want to get to top 15, but there's got to be a process to that. And I think if you look at the goals and it's like, okay, I went to Australia, but I didn't win the event, but actually I beat someone that I hadn't beaten before and I got to a career high. So it's the process of that. I think it can become very draining if you just focus, goal orientated. Of course, we all have like the goals you want to achieve, but it's the little steps and it's the day to day that is going to make that overall difference. I think you can't for me, in terms of tennis, you can't turn up to a tournament and expect to do well if you haven't put in that day to day work. So yeah, that's the way I like to think about it. And sometimes I'll achieve a goal easier than others, but ultimately the grind never changes. You still have to turn up every day and do the work.
Here's a question, right? I love the whole trusting in the process. How do you find how do you identify that the process that you are on is worth trusting? How do you come to that conclusion?
Well, I think if I was on the wrong path, I probably wouldn't be where I am today because there's probably been lots of different things that I could have just gone and been like, oh, do you know what? This is too hard, or I had an injury. I've had to face so much adversity. I think you've got to trust the process of everything. For me, I believe everything happens for a reason, and if I haven't done well at a tournament or I haven't won something, there's a reason for that, and there's a better version of me that can win an event or that can turn up. So I think, yeah, you've got to be happy within your environment, your team, and you've got to know that everyone's on the same page. Because it could be easy to drift off and be like, okay, well, something's not working, and that's not to say that that hasn't happened. I do have to make hard decisions of if I think I'm working with a coach that doesn't have the same mindset as me, doesn't have the same commitment, or something like that. You have to change it fast. But I think ultimately you have to trust the process that you're on, and yeah, I think for me, I just got a lot of resilience, and I can think deeper. I can see the reasons of why I haven't been able to succeed within something quicker than others, or whatever. So that's kind of why.
How does that process work for you? Like,
In
so
terms of what?
in terms of, so say for example, you don't win a tournament that you were hoping to win, right?
Yeah,
And now the obvious answer is the fact that you've dealt with way bigger challenges than winning or not winning a tennis tournament, right? Well,
yeah,
that's fairly
yeah,
obvious statement, yeah. But you can't be as good an athlete as you are without being, for want of a better phrase, a competitive prick, right? Right? You
yeah,
like win, right? Right? And you don't like losing.
yeah,
So in
yeah,
the moment, I'm sure that it would still bite you on the arse, right? When you haven't won when you wanted to win.
yeah,
In that moment, take me there, right? In terms
yeah,
of how you process that, because honestly, I think it'd be a relatively lazy thing for me to just take the answer of there are bigger things and I've had bigger challenges. Because I think that's just honestly, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Rubes, right? Tell me if I'm talking shit.
Mhm.
But I just feel that that for me is it completely discredits you as an athlete to just
yeah.
default to that as an answer. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think there's parts of that that are true, and parts that might not be. Like I had that, for example, in Bolton last month. I played a competition. I was 5-3 up in the third set. I should have closed the match out, and I didn't. I should have. I was the better player, if you like, on paper. But yeah, I didn't close the match out, and that hurts. Obviously, losing a match like that when I'm so close to finishing, it is simply 4 points. And then yeah, I would have won that match, would have progressed, would have helped my ranking. So you do have pressures of the program, pressures of, improving your ranking and things like that. But I think, you know, you have to kind of take a moment, and I think, I reflect, I have a debrief, I chat to my coaches, and I reflect on that match. And sometimes it is as simple as, you know what, you should have won that match and today just wasn't that day. Or, you are the better player, but you just didn't turn up and they deserve to win. And sometimes that's hard. And I think, yeah, more often than not, like it's for me for Bolton, I know that that one match is not going to define my year, so I can take
Mm.
myself away from it and be like, we're in February, I've just changed coaches, I'm doing lots of things. I went to Australia in January. I haven't really had a training block. There's lots of little things that come into it, and yes, and sometimes when I don't win tournaments, or, I don't progress up the different performance pathways as much as I would like, you do have to sit back and think, this is just a tennis match, life is more important. Obviously, that's not the answer the whole time, but the majority of it for example, that match in Bolton, we're in February. I should have won, and I just didn't on the day. Like it's tough, but you have to be able to move past the losses because tennis is one of them sports where you could win more points than your opponent and you will still lose. So yeah, you lose more than you win with tennis. There's only one winner every week. So I think tennis players are different when it comes to to losing. It hurts, but we have to move on because there's a tournament next week.
And I actually put Roger Federer's very, like, what is becoming a very, very famous quote in my book when he said that, you know, he only won 54 points,
Yeah,
54% of the points that he played in, right? And he's
yeah,
seen as like one of the greatest to have ever done it, right? And he only won just over half of them,
yeah,
right? You know, so um I like the fact that you've defined there how tennis players do have to just get up and crack on, right? You got to dust yourself off and crack on.
yeah,
Now, the debrief process that you have. So I really want to geek down on the sports bit for a bit, if I can.
yeah.
The debrief process, right? Is it the same process for a win as it is for a loss, or does it alter? Like, what's that debrief process like?
So it kind of first of all depends if your coach is with you at the tournament. Because for me, I travel majority of the time on my own. So the debrief will be different to whether it's in person or not. But regardless, we will always have a chat before. It's like, okay, we're playing this person. This is the plan. These are the objectives. Like, focus on these three things in the match, and then we reflect. And if it is like that, the three things, I kind of rate myself on the ability to have done that in the match, and that's win or lose. And then, yeah, if they're there in person and they've watched the match, quite often they're gonna have different views to me. You know, they've watched it from a different angle, like, I'm playing it in the moment. It's tough to always see everything. But more often than not, yeah, we the process is the same whether you win or lose because you could have won a match, but you've played terrible, and you could lose a match, and that's the best you've ever played. So that's where tennis is so different, and, like, you read a score online, and it doesn't reflect the match. You know, whether that's a win or a loss. People don't know who turns up on the day. People could have injuries, illnesses, or, you know, you could have played the best match of your life, but you've still lost and you could have done every single thing right. So the process for that doesn't really change. We keep it the same. And I think that works well for us as athletes.
It's really interesting that. Really, really interesting. And once you've given yourself like a ranking, right, or a rating, what do you do with that information? Does that then formulate how you like calibrate yourself for the next day? Is it a calibration for the next training? Is it something that, so say for example, if you play a tennis tournament sort of middle of the afternoon, right, for
Yeah.
example, do you then take that debrief and go away and reflect further or meditate, or do you just like mark it down? Right, there we go. That's the rating. On to the next one because you haven't got time to sort of
Yeah.
contemplate and ponder as much, right?
I think it depends on the outcome of like how the debrief was. There's so many more factors in it. So, you know, if it's a match that went well and, you know, we reflected on it and it was like, okay, you just need to repeat it, then yeah, I'd take that into the next match. And that's what I'd be thinking, like, can we repeat it? Can we do it again? If it's a match where, you know, I've lost and, you know, it just really wasn't my day and it was kind of like one of them. With tennis, it's very much like you're not gonna play your best all the time. You're very rarely gonna play your worst. It's like, can you play that 6, 7 out of 10? And yeah, I think sometimes you just do need to forget about a match and move on because if not, it will just keep haunting you down, if you like. And sometimes you want to take little bits from it. So quite often, you know, I could have moved really well in a match, but I didn't hit the ball out of the middle enough. So it's like, okay, well, can I take the movement that I done in that match well into this? But focus more on, you know, where I'm hitting the ball or there's just so many little factors, I think, it's hard to say yes or a definite yes or no.
Oh, for sure, man. There'll be loads of little bits of mechanics and
Yeah,
whatnot with swing and on the process and your movement and all that sort of stuff, right?
yeah,
Loads and loads of little components, which is why it sort of intrigues me as to how in depth you can go,
yeah.
especially when you're in the middle of a tournament, right? Because you can't go making massive changes when you're in the middle while you're in the middle of a tournament, because that could completely knack you, I would have thought.
Yeah, so we wouldn't make any major technical changes, but What we can do is rewatch the match. So if the match is recorded, you can rewatch it. That you can do straight away. Sometimes you can send the footage away and it will get all the data of everything worked out, and you can really reflect on that deeper, but probably not at the event. That would take time, so you do that after. Like, I'm still yet to rewatch the match in Bolton when I was 5-3 up in the third. I haven't tortured myself with that just yet, but it is something that I'd have to do, and hopefully watching that painful last few games, I'd not make the same mistake twice, and that's something that we say as well, like me and my coach, if I'm gonna make a mistake, let's not make the same one twice. I think that's good because it shows that you're trying to do something different if it's not working out. You've got a different intention on it, and yeah, and sometimes you'll go into a match and you will lose, but you've done everything right in the process of making changes. You know, sometimes tennis players is tough because you've got to make changes, but then you've got to go into a match and you know it's not perfect, so it's probably not going to work out always. But when it does, obviously it's great when you are winning them titles and going deeper in events.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I love that. I really, really like that because, the fact that, and you can relate this to any, profession of any description, right? Being able, but the way that how you've articulated it there, the way that you can analyze, pick up, low hanging fruit, should we call it, for want of a better word, the little tweaks that you can make that aren't going to cause you any drama. They're not going to cause you any headaches. They're
Yeah,
easy little fixes or whatever the case may be. And then save the big stuff till you have a bit more time to do it. Right now. And that is something that anybody listening to this, if they're embarking on their journey towards whatever success looks like for them, understanding that there are going to be times where you have got time to really tackle big stuff or take on big things, but then there's going to be times where you've just got to be able to tweak and alter, right?
yeah,
Because you haven't got space or time or resources in order to make any other changes other than that. But as per Ruby's definition of success, there, even a small tweak forces a small progression, and
yeah,
that is not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. Now, Ruby, I want to take you over to a different side of you, right? Is that all right?
yeah,
Now, you mentioned earlier, right, this word resilience, and I'm sure that you would attribute your unbelievable level of resolve to the challenges that you've had to face, on a day-to-day basis growing up with cerebral palsy, right?
yeah.
What else can I ask? What other qualities do you feel you've gained from the challenges that you've faced? And what sort of qualities, other than resilience, do you think you've gained from having the journey that you've had up to this point?
I think like I've had to face a lot of adversity, but I think, yeah, obviously I've had a great resilience and determination. But I also think for me, sport has opened up so many different doors and that's given me lots of different skills, if you like. Sport gave me a sense of purpose at a time where I didn't really know what I was doing. So I think, yeah, it's tough for me to just name things I'm good at, if you like, but I feel that yeah, I hate to use the word inspiring, but I do think that for me, I never had someone doing what I was doing when I was at school. So I feel that, lots of parents and kids will say, it's great to see you doing what you're doing and making a difference. I think, I have a different perspective on things. I've got a lot of empathy for people and I'm quite open-minded when I'm working with teachers in schools. Quite a lot of the time, it comes down to mindset, and I think I'm quite creative and quite open-minded, and I want to think differently to others. So I would probably say they're my best qualities, if you like.
Now, you say the word creative, and creativity is something that the world is starting to fall on its arse with, right? There's been
Yeah,
MRI studies and whatnot showing and proving that the brain is devolving in that frontal part, right? Which is where creativity sits. What is it in your trip that's helped you to really hone in and build that creative muscle within your brain? Like, what sort of things, or is there an example of a time or an example of a situation that you went through where it sort of really made you work and think creatively in order to get past whatever the said challenge was?
Yeah, I think, you know, day to day, like problem solving and being creative to overcome things. I would say I'm pretty good at that. And like, with the campaign and stuff, I'm creating that. Everything that's online is through me, and I've done everything myself with that. So I think, yeah, I think I'm super creative in that way, and just, yeah, tackling things, being open minded, you have to think a bit differently. I also
Mm.
have ADHD, so I'm told that you're a bit more creative when you have that. So yeah, I'm always wanting to do things and start new projects, and yeah, I think that comes down to that a little bit as well. So yeah, when you're constantly reading and playing the game of tennis, you have to be able to think quickly. You have to be able to problem solve fast, and you are out there on your own the majority of the time. So, you know, if something's not working, you've got to change it fast, and you've got to be able to deal with all different things. And that comes down to traveling as well. You know, like I travel on my own in a wheelchair with another wheelchair. Things are never always straightforward, but I think if you've got a good mindset and yeah, you can have a bit of fun with it as well. It makes it easier traveling all the time.
So you travel a lot by yourself?
Yeah, well, yeah, we do as wheelchair players. Obviously, our prize money within wheelchair tennis is very small. You only are making money if you're playing the slams. So yeah, I don't have the funds to pay my coach to come to all the tournaments. I'd love it if he could come to just a few, to be fair. But hopefully, yeah, he'll come to one or two this year. But the majority of the time, you're on your own. Like Australia, I was on my own. I go to Switzerland next week. You're on your own. It's normal thing, really.
You're being very flippant about this because obviously that's probably one of the advantages that you've talked about, right? Of being born with this as a part of your life right from the word go, right? Because you've known no different.
Yeah,
Uh, I think for anyone that hasn't been born with something of that sort of nature as part of their nature, they obviously look at it from the outside and going, "How the hell is she doing that by
yeah,
herself? Like, really?" Right? Do you sometimes not pinch yourself, but do you sometimes have a think to yourself and go and actually learn to appreciate something that essentially you take for granted is easy because you've known no different? Do you sometimes have to check yourself a little bit and actually acknowledge that, shit, you know what? I do have my little trip is a damn sight tougher,
yeah.
and as a result, I am really fucking good.
Yeah, I think I've done a lot of, like, reflecting, if you like, when I done my campaign, because when I was thinking about, 14-year-old Ruby that was, sitting in the special needs room, and I was creating PowerPoints on the athletes, the Paralympians and the tennis people that are now my friends, that, I travel with. Some of them are my coaches, I've stayed at their house. It's a really surreal thing, and it's really weird to now be, like, in that environment, and almost kind of like I manifested it, but I didn't really, because I wasn't obviously playing PE at school, but I was sitting there creating the PowerPoints and doing everything like that. So yeah, that's a little bit weird. Um, but yeah, when I went to Australia, like on my own and stuff, I was 21 at the time, so I was thinking like, yeah, this is big, and I think sometimes I don't realize the things that I have done that are quite good, I guess, if you like. But
Quite
for me,
good.
I
Yeah, man.
I
You
don't
listen
reflect on it like that.
to this chick. Listen to this young 22-year-old chick, I suppose what I'm doing's all right. You know what I mean, gang? Like, look, I think that it's fabulous to have a level of humility, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But I have this thing where um, I feel that sometimes people that are cut of the similar cloth to you, um, because they don't sometimes give themselves quite the credit that they've earned themselves, they can feel sometimes a little bit lost on the other side of the fence, right? Where you want to keep your light under a bushel and you don't want to, you don't want to big yourself up too much, right? And we've kind of had sort of little bits of conversation where we've sort of leaned into that a little bit. Part of what concerns me though is the fact that, I mean, going as we start segueing in towards, Ruby's Law, Beyond the Barriers Act and whatnot, right? That you've been really working hard on. Do you find that sometimes, yes, it's what you can sometimes say, like, yeah, this is maybe a little bit weird, and oh, this is a bit strange, I guess, and all that sort of stuff. But then, do you ever give yourself a chance to really make sure that people know about this sort of thing? Or is it sometimes a case of, look, I don't want to bring attention to the fact that I'm in a wheelchair and all that sort of stuff. I just want people to want me to like just want to know me for being me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, for me, I don't care about, whether they know about my disability anymore. I'm fine with that. And yeah, I think for me, I want to get my story out there as loud as possible. I am really proud of the way that I've overcome things and what I'm doing. I just think, yeah, I'm pretty chill with it as well at the same time. I like the way my campaign video, it got so many views, and I got lots of support via social media for that. That was great. And the bigger that can get out there, the better. And I think a real kind of weird, surreal moment, if you like, was when I returned back to my old school and I granted them my first sports wheelchair as part of the campaign. That was a real kind of pinch me moment, if you like, going back into that school that wasn't as inclusive for me, as they should have been, and seeing the same teachers speaking to the same PE department and granting them that chair. That was a moment that I really did kind of feel quite empowered. And yeah, I reflected on that quite a lot. And yeah, and I was super proud to be able to go back into that school because I've done loads of interviews, I've done lots of podcasts like this, but I've never been so nervous. Like that was probably more nervous, like, than playing a match.
Did you face any of these teachers that bloody left you outside?
That one, no, I didn't even want them in the room. They don't. I don't think for me that teacher is one I don't really want to cross paths with again. I know they still work there. I've seen them in passing, but I don't even want to give them my time of day. I have a little bit of respect, for the other teachers because there were a few that did try to help me. Ultimately, you know, I've also been told that, I defend the school a little bit too much, that ultimately they actually didn't, help me enough. But I feel that there were a couple of teachers that, did understand me and did try to support me in the ways that they could. Of course, they could have done better in some ways. But yeah, I think that member of staff, yeah, I think, yeah, I'm a bit big headed now with them. I would rather just not even speak to them.
Oh man, that's absolutely right. Give them two fingers and tell them to get stuffed.
But yeah.
Very much so. Fair play. Now, this Beyond the Barriers Act, you said that you've sort of wanted to just help people that are in similar positions and whatnot, and it's sort of grown legs like there's no tomorrow. They've really outgrown wheels like there's no tomorrow. Talk to me about this Beyond the Barriers Act. Like when you first started, did you ever envisage that it was going to go the way that it went? Because it's been talked about in Parliament, it's been
Yeah.
talked about on the news, it's been talked about in the highest echelons of decision making, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, I bet you didn't think that that was going to happen.
No, I originally actually, because I made a campaign video like when I first left school, so I would have been about 17, and that got a little bit big. It went in the local newspaper, and kind of the goal was just to get it a bit bigger than that. Um, and
Mm,
yeah, it's got, over 100,000 views on social media, and yeah, it's gone to Parliament, which is massive, and I think it's great because it's getting the like recognition that it needs. But yeah,
mm,
I didn't originally set that out, but when it did then go to Parliament, I realised, like, okay, I am really in a position here where I can really push for a bigger change, especially with the new send reform stuff happening. I wanted to be a part of that, and
mm.
I'm going to Parliament at the end of the month to sit and to discuss the ways that it can be incorporated within the new legislation that's coming out, for 2028. So I'm looking forward to hopefully getting something put in there along the lines of the Big Barriers Act, and just making sure teachers are more accountable really for what students are doing in PE. But yeah, now it's got big. yeah, I hope that that is kind of like keeping it going and not letting it like fizzle out. You've always got to have something up your sleeve or what's next, what's going to happen, because ultimately the long term goal is that, you know, no student is left out because of their disability. But also for me, I want to make it compulsory that schools have adaptive equipment in their PE cupboard like any other standard piece of PE equipment. So yeah, you've always got to keep coming up with new ideas.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely right. You know, because the great thing about people that have got your sort of mindset is that you don't see hurdles, you just see opportunities. Like what you were saying before, right?
Yeah.
Always looking for new opportunities, new ways, creating new opportunities is really critical part of earning success and whatnot, which I completely agree with. Can you tell me of a time where you thought you had a really good idea that was going to help and it went to shit?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I created like a business and it didn't really happen. But it
No.
would have happened if I had the time. So the idea was obviously that I would like be going coaching, doing things, and yeah, I just had to like shut it down because actually I just signed myself up to so many different things that I, don't have time for. Um, but the idea is still there, and I still very much will want to do that in the future. I'm currently working on quite a big event that I hope will happen in the summer, where
Mm,
I invite lots of schools across Norfolk, and we go and we try lots of different sports, and it's kind of like a almost like my own sports day that I never got invited to, but for the kids. So it's called Ruby Bishop's Inclusive Sports Festival,
mm.
but it hasn't happened yet, and I am solo in organising it all, so there are lots of different things that have to be done. So it could go to shit. It might not happen, but I hope that it will. Once I get an idea, I want to see it through, but I also want to see it through perfectly, not half-hearted.
For sure, man. Absolutely, for sure. Ruby, I'm really conscious that I've already taken up 45 minutes of your time, and I know you've probably got lots and lots of other very, very important things to do rather than sit and talk to me for however long. Um, I'm just fascinated by you though, Rubes, because you, someone who is 22, irrespective of whatever challenges and hurdles you've faced and overcome and all the rest of it, you do very much come across as quite an old soul. And I
Okay.
say that a completely positive thing,
Yeah,
right? It's a level of maturity that, and a level of clarity almost by the sounds of it,
yeah.
that very few people manage to achieve. What do you think it is? And again, I don't want to default to an obvious answer here. What do you think it is within yourself that allows you to operate with such a level of clarity in the direction that you're going?
I think for me, it's I know what I want to achieve, and I know that I don't want anyone to feel the way I did in school in education. So I know the steps I have to take to achieve that, and once I achieve that, I'll know that I've done my job, if you like.
Mm,
Despite the challenges I faced, I think having left now and in a good place, because my mental health when I was at school was terrible, but now I can reflect and I can realize that it's given me great motivation to improve the system, if you like.
mm,
And in terms of tennis, I think I've always had a dream of getting to the top and doing what I'm doing now. So it's just to keep climbing that ladder and get to the senior slams. I've done it at juniors, so I've got the belief that I can make it in seniors. So yeah, that's really it. I know what I want to achieve, and I think that always helps when you've got a bit of a clear plan. Of course, it's not straightforward. There's lots of barriers and obstacles that you have to overcome, but yeah, I know what I want to do, if you like.
so good. So good. Ruby, I could talk to you for donkeys. I swear, I could talk to you for so long and just listen. You're like, I'm mesmerized, Doc. You're absolutely brilliant.
Thank
But
you.
conscious that the longer you spend talking to me, the less time you're going to spend getting yourself organized so you get into them slams. And I have to chauffeur you around Melbourne when you're winning the Australian Open and that, right?
Yeah.
So Ruby, one last question before I let you go. This has been absolute joy, by the way. It's been so good. Thank you so much. One last question we always ask is, as you head towards the next version of success for you, there's always going to be something either missing in the artillery or something that you would love to add into your kit of tools that helps you through life. And it can be technical, can be something else, whatever. You could just turn around, tell to me and say to me, you know what, man, I need to, my backhand slice just needs to bloody get locked in because it is dog shit at the minute and it needs to get better. All right. All right. So Ruby Bishop, as you head towards whatever your version of success is on the horizon, what is one thing that you feel that you need to either add in or improve in order to achieve that level of success?
I think probably maybe just a more consistent training program, if you like. It's very sporadic when you're
Mm,
traveling all the time. You've
for
got
sure.
to, nothing is the same week to week. I don't have the same schedule. So if we can kind of create a better home training and um, manage that bit better, that's great. And obviously manage that as well with all the commitments with the parliament and the campaign stuff. But yeah, that would be good.
And that's fascinating, right? Because I think everybody has challenges keeping those plates spinning. But for yourself, when we've talked about always turning up and all those sorts of things,
Yeah,
but having those sort of habitual processes to help you maintain that rate of improvement, that in itself is a challenge as well. So it's not just about turning up; it's about turning
yeah.
up in the right way, with a format that you know is going to give you a more formulaic approach to winning, right? Interesting stuff, man. Very, very interesting. And I'm gutted that I asked that last because I could go into a whole train of questions off the back of that. Anyway, but I've got to refrain and I've got to let you go. I've got to let Ruby go, gang. I'm sure that you want to I'm sure that you will want to follow this incredible human being as she goes and takes on the world in her chosen craft. I will be making sure that all of the links to all of the stuff that she's doing are in the show notes and what have you. Ruby, is there anywhere in particular that you would like people to find you?
I think, yeah, my social media on Instagram is Ruby Bishop, the blue tick verified, so you'll know it's me. And yeah, it's the same name on every social. So
Well, Ruby by name, Diamond by nature. You're an absolute star, and I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it, Ruby. Thank you so much for joining me.
yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Fabulous. Well, team, I don't know about you. I gotta question some things because I clearly haven't done anywhere near enough as much as what I should when I'm bloody sat here chatting to this ridiculously incredible individual. But on behalf of Ruby and myself, you guys
Always.
make sure that you stay safe, healthy, and happy. Enjoy whatever it is that you've got coming up for you over the course of the next day, week, month, and year. And until next time, my friends, we'll see you next time on the podcast. Take care.